Hi, I'm Mendy Stoll with the Sweet Seat and Veritas AI Agency. Today I have Sally Lapides with us from Residential Properties. And we had such a great conversation. I'm so thankful that she decided to come on the podcast because she is such a wealth of knowledge, so warm, and I admire what she's built. So I want to just ask you, Sally, to tell me a little bit about you, and then maybe we can talk about a little bit about the company. And then I have so many questions for you.
Of course, of course. I'm happy to be here. Well, I am from Rhode Island, and um, I went into the real estate sort of inadvertently. And in the 1970s, when I was supposed to head off to graduate school, and my mother was in the real estate business and convinced me that I should go into the business for a year before I went to graduate school. So I did, and after a couple of months of working at an art gallery, I decided that she was right. I should try real estate, so I did. And here I am, all these years later. I started my company, Residential Properties, in 1981, and it started with 6 women in the company, which was really it was an unusual time because women did not own a lot of businesses back at that time period. And I started it with 6 women, and we worked really, really hard. And I really wanted Residential Properties to stand out as not just a woman owned business, but also as a company that did marketing differently than other real estate companies. And when I say that, what I mean by that is that, if you go back that many years, you really remember that we were dependent on newspapers. So every single ad read, 3 bedroom, 1.5 bath colonial for $29,000. And I just wanted the description to be different and the photos to be different. So I started a company that really specialized in marketing. And over this period of time, I have 250 brokers and 9 offices. And we're in Rhode Island and nearby Massachusetts. And we're well known for the work that we do. And honestly, you're not the only Californian that I've talked to. People know who we are. They've heard of us. They've read about us. So I'm pretty proud of everyone at this company.
I love that. Nine, especially in today's age where so many of them are being rolled up into these bigger companies, and you've sustained and maintained, and actually you're adding your ninth office, which is so cool. And your son's in
Yes.
the business, so you've got mentorship with him. If I was new in the business, what would you tell me that I need to know? What are the top three things? I'm sitting across from you. I've been so lucky to come to your brokerage and you're my mentor and I'm brand new and I say, okay, what should I be doing? What should I expect?
Well, you cannot be a secret agent. And I think a lot of people believe that they are. They really think they can make a living going from the office to their house and their house to the office. And the reality is, it's all the things you do in between that are going to help you grow your business, because the real estate business, like many sales related businesses, is all done through relationships. People have to trust you. People have to know you're smart, and people have to know you work just as hard as they do. And it's so what I would say to a new agent is, let everyone you've ever met, from kindergarten on, every teacher you ever had, everybody, let them know that you are in the business. Set aside time every day to write handwritten notes to people. Do not depend on texting, which is really what young people depend on and call it talking to. But the reality is that most people don't get letters anymore. And so all of a sudden, you go to your mailbox and you see a handwritten letter, you're actually going to read it. It's not an ad. It's saying, "Hi, Mendy, I was thinking about you. Happy belated birthday. And I saw that you went on a trip." It's something to connect with somebody on. So I would tell them to write 5 letters to people that they know, that will ultimately affect their business. I wanted you to know that I've gone into the real estate business. And if you know anyone who wants to buy or sell, I would love it if you'd share my name with them. I mean, it's a very simple thing. I write letters of gratitude all the time, and it keeps me grateful because I believe that good and happy is teachable. I think we can all get stuck in that ditch of minutia where we say, "Oh, I had a terrible day." Nope, you had a terrible 5 minutes, and the
Yeah.
rest of the day was darn good. So I think that if you write a letter of gratitude every day, then you actually sort of help your mind focus on what the good parts of your life are. And then I think the third thing I would say is that to a new agent is there is nothing that will ever replace hard work. And so the agents that are most successful devote an inordinate amount of time understanding the market, understanding what's on the market, what the interest rates are, how to get smarter than, you know, buyers and sellers are very smart because the internet provides so much information for them that you certainly don't want your agent to be less smart than you are. You're not even in the business. So I would tell, I tell people all the time to, drive by every house that's in the area that you have contacts in so that when somebody calls you, you can say that brown house that just came up on Hope Street is exactly what you're looking for. And you, you just sound as invested in the process as the buyer will be, or the seller is, or whatever. Those are the three key things that a new agent would start by to really increase their business and their profile. I believe that they should invest in themselves. It's not just the company that you work at. It's investing in your own brand because real estate agents are not employees. They're affiliated with a brokerage, but they are their own brand. So the agents that are most successful in this business nationally have their own brand and they invest in it. So they're proud of the brokerage that they're with, and that's a wonderful national brand for them, whether it be a national brand or an independent like myself. But they're very proud of their brokerage that they work with. The difference for them is that they need to establish themselves as different from every other broker out there looking for business. And so I think that all of that is really helpful. When I got started in the business, I was very interested in education and the arts. And so I was on two or three boards that I connected with other board members, and they trusted me. They heard me at board meetings. They saw my passion for whatever we were all doing together, and that's how we developed relationships. And it's the relationships that what I call grow babies. So not literally, but figuratively, they are able to, you get referrals and then those referrals give other referrals. And so it's a wonderful if you can adopt some of the things that I'm talking about, I think in any industry you will find that it's much easier to be successful.
I love it. I heard mindset. I heard connections, make
Mhm,
connections. I heard
mhm.
work hard, but I love the way you explained it. Don't be an undercover agent. You gave actionable steps because that oftentimes people will say, "Well, do a gratitude journal." They don't sort of explain, "Hey, that keeps your mind focused on all the good." And no, it wasn't. You can't let 5 minutes control your whole entire day. You have to have perspective. It's five
E
minutes. So I love the way
exactly.
you explained all that, and I can see why you're so successful and
Thank
what a
you.
great mentor. Yeah, and it's so you're right. They're their own brands, right? They're not employees.
Brands.
They have to get their name out there, and so I think that was all really interesting. What about? I would ask you, how have you seen the market change in the last 10 years? Because
And
I'm
it
sure it's
has, yeah. It has indeed. You know The real estate industry for hundreds of years was all little mom and pop, small, independent brokerages. And in the last 10 years, the tech business has gone into the real estate business.
Mhm.
And the largest company that has gone around the US and bought many independent successful brokerages have attracted them because of their platforms, what they offer for tech. But the reality is about probably 80% of the people that work at their company actually utilize all the technology because they're in it because of people. So what has happened to our business is between the lawsuit that happened several years ago, redefining how we get compensated, and the tech companies buying independents, it's pretty unusual for an independent to still keep growing
Mhm.
because but what is wonderful about being independent is that anybody can just pick up the phone and call me or call their manager and get an answer fast. We are not so structured that you have to use this piece of material in order to send out your new listings. What's happened is many of the companies now all look alike. All the
Mm.
big, huge companies, all of their technology is almost exactly the same. Just the brand looks a little different, but mostly an independent company like mine is attracts brokers who like independence. I mean, they're actually in the real estate business because they are independent. And so being at an independent company is really appealing to a lot of people. We have hired we have hired many brokers over the last 5 years who tried the large companies and decided that they actually missed that sort of rooted relationship part of the business. So the business has changed. I would say overall the entire world didn't know that there was not price fixing. That the reality was commissions have always been negotiable and they continue to be. They continue to be. That's a big change. I think there are many different ways of marketing now. It's not just clearly it's not the newspaper the way it used to be. A lot of people are doing reels. So in our marketing department that we have somebody who just does social media and reels. We have you know, people now use drone photography and it doesn't have to be a mansion that you're profiling. So it's all the marketing pieces that an agent has the ability to use are different than they were 10 years ago. Agents used to be kind of shy about being in front of a camera. And all of a sudden, we've got megastars all over our company who are in front of the camera all the time and talking to people about this neighborhood diner or that art exhibit that's going on or something that makes their neighborhood special. I think it's a much better way for people moving into our state to be able to better understand what the community offers. It's there are changes from, from tech to changes in commission split, changes in marketing tools. There are a million changes. And the one thing we know for sure is nothing ever stays the same. So, as a business owner, if you don't keep up with it, if you don't embrace it, if you don't figure out what is valuable to you and your company and your agents, then, you're probably not going to survive all these changes. But it's part of the fun of being in this business and being in my position is that I get to stay young by being around young people who are super smart.
I love, it's so interesting because you are growing, and that's a very unique thing right now because I'm either seeing that they're declining or they're being purchased.
Mhm.
And so, and you have a unique, I think, perspective that brings people to come to you. And one of the things we talked about is you're at the right size to be nimble. which makes it much harder for the larger companies to do, which means you can make decisions really quickly. So if
Yes.
I'm why do you think agents join the resident if you had to sum it up, why do they
Yes.
join residential properties? Because there's so many to choose from, and obviously
Yes.
you are growing. So
Yes.
why does someone come in and say, "This
So
is my home"?
yeah, I think that it's I think I think what they like, what attracts them is that we've been successful for many years, and that success has been because we have extraordinary brokers. So it's really wonderful to work with brokers who are experienced and smart and successful, and they all think that they can learn from them, and they do. I think that they like how much we mentor because we educate. We have an education department and we educate all the time in this company for both new agents and agents that just want an opportunity to grow their business and see what else will help them be a better agent. So I think agents from other companies see that. I think that they love our marketing. It's very different from other people's marketing. And so they love our marketing and our creativity. We have a relocation division, and that really helps agents when they have a friend that's moving to LA. We are part of a network, a national network that we refer people to other places around the world and they refer to us. So that's very appealing. We invest in our agents' growth when they first come to the business because we have training in how to do what do we call it? No, sorry. We have training on how to do referrals through third-party networks that would be helpful to grow their business. And so I think and I just think that the overall independence and the depth of the fact that our managers don't sell. I mean, people are really attracted to a company where the owner or the manager are not selling people. We're never going to compete against them. And so that's very appealing. I think that that's the reason. We have very deep roots.
And also I would say, why does somebody work with a broker? We've got lots of technology. You were talking about the technology coming. And so
Mhm.
and we have the rise of AI and all these
Yes.
things. So why does someone say I need a broker?
Well, the majority of people do need a broker because it is negotiating is a real art. And in a marketplace like we're all in the last few years, where there is very little inventory and more people that want home ownership, you need somebody who is expert at taking you want and making it so appealing and giving them the advice so that they'll end up with a house. And because still we're seeing multiple offers, not like it was during COVID, but it clearly is a market where people still want home ownership and so your broker needs to be experienced in financing. There are lots of different ways to finance. You wouldn't know it if you said, I'm going to talk to Chat GPT and I'm going to try to figure out how to do this without a broker. It's going to save me money. It may be saving you money and it may be costing you money and so finding a broker at a brokerage firm that is wonderful reviews, has a really great write up on the website about who they are, what they specialize in, and why you should work with them is a really important thing. And you have to sign a contract now it used to be that somebody could come into a house and there was no contract and you had no obligation and you either worked with them or you didn't work with them. We are now required to have a contract with a buyer in order to take them into the first house. So you have to explain agency, how I represent you, how the seller is represented, how we get paid, who pays us. So that is an education that most buyers and sellers don't know because they only buy a house every 5 or 7 years, and the mo and everything has changed in the last 7 years. So, I think they need a broker because it would be like going to your carpenter to have dentistry done. You just need somebody who knows the business better than you do and is smarter than you are at it.
I think of all these reasons like fiduciary duty, right? I want
Mhm.
someone who has my best interest in mind and
Mm.
has the experience. To your point, most people don't buy houses frequently enough, and they may not know the laws, they may not know contracts, they may be emotionally intertwined in the process. It's
Yes.
probably, for most people, it's probably the largest purchase they'll ever make. And
Correct.
it's also a very emotional experience for a lot of people because it's a home. It's where they think to, live and reside and
Yes.
have their private moments and raise their family. And so I think having somebody who doesn't have the emotional attachment to the house or the process can better negotiate,
Yes.
and they have a history of experience that tells them this is generally how these things turn out. So
Yes.
while people could do it on their own, and while I think technology is evolving, giving us a lot
Mhm.
of good information, I don't think
Mhm.
it replaces the need for an agent or that
Yes.
representation. I do believe it can empower us more.
Yes.
It can allow us to be more efficient at our jobs, stay in front of people, have that human experience. But we need to. I think most people don't realize. They think, oh, you just purchase a house, but there's a
Yes.
lot of things that happen in that process, inspections and liability, and you know.
Yes.
If you purchase a house and you don't understand and it's got termites and you didn't do an inspection, so there's all these things that
Right. Or
I
you
don't.
didn't yeah, or you didn't know that or flood insurance was required there, and all of a
Yes.
sudden you get a big flood insurance bill. I didn't know that. Yeah, or that there's, a plant going in down the street that's going to be producing toxic chemicals, and you just thought that you were buying a farm, So it's really unusual for someone who is a buyer that knows everything that they need to know that a broker knows. And going through that inspection period, if it is so hard to negotiate for yourself. I've been doing this forever and I have never listed my own house. I don't want somebody to walk into the house and say, "Ugh, have you seen that wallpaper?" And I'm going to say, "How dare you say that? That was hand painted in France." You know, so so I just always feel that a third party disinterested has a much better shot at keeping the emotions at bay. And here's the interesting thing. My mother was in this business before I was, and she always said to me, "Sally, don't ever let a relationship while you're going through it turn into something that's really unpleasant. Never dislike a buyer, a seller, or a broker until after you close. And then once you close, you can say, "Oh, that was hard." But the truth is you need a broker to help you through those moments when, it comes down to the dishwasher staying, that kind of stuff. And I remember I sold a very, very expensive house years ago to somebody, and they really wanted, when they sold their house, they really wanted to keep their washer and dryer. And I said to them, "Let me ask you a question. Is this going to bother you in 30 days?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Okay. What about 60 days?" He said, "No." I said, "Then let it go. They want your washer and dryer, go replace it." So the truth is you need somebody that doesn't have that emotion negotiating on your behalf. And you get much better representation when you use somebody as opposed to when you use yourself because you just don't have the experience of doing it every day.
Well, and you're also not insured.
Right, that's the other part, right?
And, Well, I also think you said something really interesting that is great business advice when you were telling the story with your mom, right?
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
as an agent or a broker, you said something so powerful, which is listen, during the transaction, you're not allowed to dislike or have a feeling or frustration with a friend or a client. And that's really great advice because it allows you to compartmentalize your own feelings that you might have because the truth of the matter is not every buyer or seller or the agent on the other side is going to be easy. And
Right,
so it's, do you want to be right or do you want to win?
right,
And
right.
so if your goal is to do a good job for your client and get that transaction done, then you have to compartmentalize that and put aside maybe anything that's ruffling your feathers
Mhm,
and get it done. And then afterwards you're allowed to say, "Whew, that was a tough one." I
uh,
think that is
right.
beautiful advice. Beautiful
Thank
because so many times people they come into a business which real estate can be a very emotional business. People are
Mhm,
buying their home, right?
mhm.
And so I love that. That's such great advice.
Good, I'm glad. I mean, my mother was an incredibly wise woman, and she gave me lots of advice, and, I pass that on to agents all the time when I'm mentoring them because there are too many people that don't follow that advice, and then all of a sudden you get to a closing and the buyer hates the seller and they've never met before. So it's what the agent said to the when I used to teach people that, when an offer comes in, if it's low, this is what you have to say to a seller. Not, oh my God, look at how low this is, but say, I know this is disappointing, but this is the offer, and let's see how high we can get them before you walk away from this deal. And all of a sudden it reframes, and then and when the seller says, well, you can tell them to jump off a bridge, I say, the seller thanked you very much for your offer. But so, I mean, you have to translate. You can't do somebody's anger or frustration and pass it on. They're going to dislike each other. Then it means that when you get to the structural inspection, you're not going to get anything you ask for because they're already
Yes.
mad at you.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's a fun
So
business.
such see, Sally, you're helping me understand why people choose residential properties because the big companies teach logistics, they teach operations, they teach go knock on doors, go talk to people, go do a reel. Those are all
Yes.
great things to teach, but they
Mhm.
don't teach leadership or the intangibles of well, you're in the middle of the deal. What do you do with that? Which is exactly what I mean maybe you get it if you have the mentor, maybe you get it, but it's not built into the culture. It's not built typically into the mentorship. And what you're talking about are all the pieces that can make an agent, can save them a lot of learning because
Mm,
you're shortcutting all those years that you realized. You said something so interesting. You said if the seller and the buyer get to the table and they hate each other, it was the agents, right? Because you're
mhm,
right, they've never
mhm.
met before. And so that says somewhere there was a breakdown in the process of the way that they translated. And so I think
Yes,
those are
yes.
those are the reasons why people say residential property is where I need to be because that information is valuable. That is
Thank
unbelievable.
you.
Like you can go look up how to be successful and figure out to do reels or door knock, but those things that
Mhm.
you're talking about, those are 30 years or 50 years or 40 years of
That's
business that
right. That's right. That I really believe that, and I do think that that's why we have retained so many brokers over the years in this company. I give out awards for 30, 35, 40 years. I mean, it's a lot of there's a lot of loyalty and people are attracted to it and people see it in this business both from a buyer point of view, a seller point of view, or an agent point of view.
and what do you think is next? What do you think is trending in the real estate world right now? What are you seeing kind of coming that most people might not even have on their radar? You're
Well,
in the middle of it, so you've got insight.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that more sellers are likely to be asking their broker to do unusual forms of marketing, not typical forms of marketing. And, it might be typical in New York to advertise in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, but it is not typical in Rhode Island to advertise a home in the historic district in Providence in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. I think there's going to be more of that because people have the ability to be much more mobile than they were. Many offices are working, 2 days a week in person and 3 days at home. So I think that you'll see more marketing further away to attract
Hmm.
people to come. So, I mean, that may not be a trend, but I do think that that's coming. I think that you will certainly still see fewer and fewer independent firms that can hang on and compete against the big corporate giants. I think that you will see now that Compass has bought Anywhere Real Estate, which is the holding company for so many of the different companies, Sotheby's, ERA, Century 21, Coldwell Banker, so on. I think that you're going to see marketing materials look alike, just be in different colors.
Yeah.
And I think that their back end of their websites are all going to basically have the same kind of technology. And I do think that the the market will come back because the market doesn't stay favoring sellers for as long as I mean, we've had a long time
Oh,
where
yes.
it was a seller's market. I actually think we're going to now see a balanced market. I think interest rates are likely to be where they are. We have inflation. We have cost of living is expensive. But I do think that there will be some bigger changes and some subtle changes that you'll see going forward over the next 5 years. I also think that there are going to be companies that will just close because they just we're done. We're done with the changes in the real estate business, and the people are older and are just done.
Yeah, I was talking to someone yesterday who had been in real estate for a long time, and he was
Mhm.
telling me that he has seen a lot of the brokerages are either being bought up or they're
Mhm.
failing. And
Yes. Right.
why do you think that consolidation is happening? And why do you think some are making it, some are being consolidated? You're in an unusual position that you're
I
continuing
I
to be
am.
independent and grow.
Right. I think that if somebody started a business 35 or 40 years ago, they might not value their independence the same way that I value my independence. I think that the larger companies that are gobbling up smaller independents are not finding people who started their company 10 years ago and are 35 or 40 years old as the owners. They're going after brokerages where the ownership is older and may just not have the same interest and drive as they did when they first started. I think I'm a sort of an anomaly because I have a son that's in the business and loves it, and I love it. And I as I say to him often, we're going to be like Queen Elizabeth and Prince Charles. I'm
Love
going
it.
to work here until I'm 95, and yeah, yeah. But I just think that I just think that it is hard to compete in a marketplace where you can't afford the amount of technology that the large companies offer. And I think that's the real reason why independents end up it just got too expensive. Agents demand a higher amount of commission split than they used to, and companies don't invest in things that will make them competitive with the national organizations. I think that's really why you're seeing consolidation.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I can see that in the conversation that I had with the gentleman yesterday. He said kind of
Mhm,
the same thing where
mhm.
some people just wanted to exit. They were sort of not needing to run the business anymore. They were at that stage. And he was also saying, so much technology is coming, and they're lowering the commission splits with the
Yes.
house, and
Right.
they can't be profitable quite as much. And so
Yes.
it's interesting. But what's your secret to growing? Because you bucked the trend. So
Well,
so why
you
did
know
because I know you value your independence, so we don't need to
yes.
sell. But
Yeah,
but why are
yeah.
we how are we growing?
Well, we're growing because I've strategically tried to open up markets that we were not in, and then attracted agents that had deep roots in that community. So I think that that's why gr- growth has happened for us, because we've been in most of the communities that we're in for longer than 20 years. And so we have roots, but now I'm sort of excited about territories that we haven't affected the same amount of business. So I develop relationships is the bottom line, or agents will call me and say, I just had a great deal with, Mary Jones, and you really should call her because she was wonderful to work with. So I just pick up the phone. I just call people. It works. At
I
least
see
it
that's your skill
yeah.
set. I mean, the minute I talk to you, I'm like, I feel like I've known you forever and I want to have coffee, and I can definitely
Yeah.
see that's a skill set, for
Thank
you. Is
you.
I thought if she was around the corner,
Yeah.
I'd
We'd be
take her to
having
coffee.
lunch. Right.
Yeah. And so I
Exactly.
can see that's a skill set. I can tell you genuinely like people, but it's also a skill
I
set.
do.
And it's that saying, it's never how, it's always who.
Right.
You can always
Right.
figure out how, but it's
Yes.
who. And what I'm hearing is your philosophy is who, and that's the relationship side person of you that
It
has.
is. It is the most important thing. I'm very, very rich in relationships, and that is my currency. I don't look at money the same way that a lot of people look at it.
Yes,
For me, I'm rich in people.
I think that that is a big aha right there. You
Thank you.
that is honestly, if anybody was starting a business, my hope is that they hear this and they have that aha moment. And I think that's such an aha, because being rich in people is so fulfilling personally, but it also is what we're all here for. And it's also the success will come. That's the byproduct of being a good person and having good
That's right.
relationships and the hard
That's
work,
right.
as you say,
It it
you
it it
doesn't.
is, it is, but I've never felt like I worked before. I mean, everybody says, "Oh, I can't wait to retire." Like, for me, I can't imagine retiring. I mean, I just love meeting new people, growing my network. I'm really interested in people. I really am truly, truly interested in who they are and how they are and what I can do, if anything, to help their day be better.
Thank you for joining and sharing all your wisdom and knowledge. I
You're
feel like there's
welcome.
so much more, but I know we had a good amount of time, and
Right.
I appreciate
That
you. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I just appreciate this opportunity, and I feel the same way about you, that I feel like we're old friends, not new friends, and I hope that we continue to be friends.
Yeah, I might even just call you once in a while and check on you.
And you should. You sh
I do. I do. I call people that I every once in a while just to say hi. And I think that's the lost art. People
Yes.
texting is fine
Yes.
for good, quick things, but there's a lost art in the handwritten note. There's a lost art in picking up the phone for 10 or 15 minutes. I was thinking about you. What's going on with you?
Yes. Yes.
That's a lost art. And I think the younger generation, the texting is so much the way that they communicate, which is great, but the problem is you can't there's something irreplaceable about having that FaceTime and being in person or picking up the phone and hearing someone's voice. You cannot replicate that. The same sort of relationship does not build by text. It just
That's
doesn't.
right. It doesn't. You're absolutely right. So this has been wonderful, and
Thank you,
I
Sally.
have loved talking to you today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it immensely.